Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on Assess and Empower, which is about our assessments features here in SpacesEDU. My name is Tatiana. I am so thrilled to be here with all of you today just to record this webinar for you. I'm one of the education training and engagement specialists here at SpacesEDU. My journey actually started in higher education where I was an academic advisor, helping out university students navigate their learning journeys. Now I help teachers like yourselves understand how to use the platform effectively and help them identify features that align best with their teaching practices. So we have a really fun agenda for today. We're just going to go through what is essentially SpacesEDU and then demonstrate the different assessment features and tools that live within the platform that you probably already have access to. Then we'll go over your next steps. And if you have any questions after watching this recording, you can always send an email to our support team for additional assistance. But essentially, the objective of the webinar is to make sure that you gain the confidence, clarity to successfully engage in meaningful assessment practices while within SpacesEDU with actionable next steps to start implementing the platform as soon as tomorrow. So we're just going to skip over the polls here and dive right into what essentially is the platform. So if this is your first time seeing SpacesEDU in action, I just wanted to give you a quick recap of what the tool is and how it can help you. Essentially, SpacesEDU is a digital portfolio and competency-based assessment platform built to showcase growth. This is where students, teachers, and families can capture and celebrate the learning journey with visible assessments and reporting practices. Today, we are going to take a look at just the assessment pieces, but if you are looking to get into the nitty-gritty on how to get started, I would recommend watching our previous webinars on your first class, getting started with SpacesEDU, so you have the foundation that you need before tackling all of these assessment pieces. Before we kick things off, let's just discuss what formative assessment is all about. At its essence is a student-centered process, right, that captures learning in real time, informing and enhancing instructional practices along the way. The continuous exchange of high-quality feedback enables both teachers and students to identify strengths, areas for improvement, and next steps in the learning journey. Now, this continuous cycle provides students with crystal clear answers to key questions, as you can see here on the screen, such as where am I going? This determines the learning objectives and develops the success criteria. Then we have where am I now? This elicits evidence of learning and interprets students' progress toward the learning objectives and success criteria. And finally, where to next? Then that identifies gaps in understanding based on their evidence of learning to dictate their next steps. So this is a constant loop that we operate on when assessing students in a formative fashion. So how can you facilitate formative assessment in SpacesEDU? You have a wealth of assessment tools at your disposal, but it all really begins with our foundational feature, which are curriculum tags. By integrating curriculum tags with the application of proficiency scales, you can ensure that the curriculum aligns effectively. So this not only keeps yourselves accountable, but also encourages your students to actively engage with their learning when they can see how the curriculum is structured. Additionally, the proficiency report helps us quickly and easily identify gaps in classroom learning. This insight allows us to adjust our instruction and provide students with opportunities to continue growing. You can also use the growth book, which is our standards-based and competency-based grade book to track student progress without needing to attach evidence of learning for each entry. And in today's webinar, we'll dive into these tools and explore how they can enhance your assessment practices. As you're watching this webinar today, I want you to consider this question. So what are you most interested in learning about assessment today? Not all these tools might speak to you, but certainly take notes to what features and abilities that come with each of these tools that would be beneficial for you and might actually help streamline your assessment practices. Okay, let's take a look at curriculum tags and proficiency scales within the platform. So I'm going to dive right into one of my classes here. So for just a quick refresh, you have to load your curriculum tags before you are able to apply them to student work or even able to assess student within the platform. If you've completed the Getting Started with SpacesEDU modules before, you would have already done this as part of the final process to set you up for success for assessment. But if you haven't done this yet, that's fine. We can do this together. So you would go to the Assessment tab here on the top navigation bar, and you'll notice that there's a Manage Tag Sets button right over here. So as you can see, I've already loaded my own account with a bunch of curriculum tags. So you'll have to do this as well. If this is your first time setting up your class, then this will be completely empty. So you'll be starting from fresh. You'll have to just simply click the Add Curriculum Tag Sets button up here and then search by state or province, or maybe your school if there were personalized, customized curriculum tags attached. So by going to state and province, I could maybe just quickly show you through British Columbia here. And then if I were to go into English Language Arts, select grade 4, you'll notice that this activates the blue button. So you have to click this to add the set, and then you repeat the same steps for additional curriculum tags. So of course, it will be up to you to decide what you like to track on SpacesEDU, right? The intention is not for you to track everything. That would be asking for a lot. So definitely be more intentional and have targeted curricular objectives that you like to track here on the platform. Right, let's just exit out of there. So now that we have our curriculum tag sets loaded, we can start tagging student work directly from our class. So we can do this a couple ways. We can go directly into the class space or the space that we want to take a peek at, or we can also operate from the feed where we have access to all posts across all of these spaces in our class. Maybe my objective for today is to take a look at portfolios. So I'll go into the portfolio space here, and then I want to see what Malin is up to. So I'll navigate to Malin's portfolio. And as you can see, I've already attached curriculum tags to Malin's post here, but perhaps I want to edit those, so I can click on any of them right here, and then I can remove if I want to, right? I can add additional ones as well. But if for the existing pieces, what I can do, I can also simply attach a proficiency for each of these and then check this off. And there you go. The work has been assessed. And what you would probably notice on the right panel here is that the curriculum tags were updated, and you would be able to see the average proficiency applied as well for said curriculum tag. So these are also filter capabilities here. You can sort the posts based on these specific curriculum tags for a more targeted view. And another piece that I would like you to also think about as you're watching this webinar is how can you ensure students are receiving meaningful feedback? What are your current best practices for providing ongoing feedback as well? There are certainly different elements within the platform that could facilitate that feedback loop. Of course, we have the comments section, but you can also utilize other methods like comments or even as you're providing feedback to students in the classroom, you could pull up the app and record that conversation as it's happening and make sure that it is recorded on Spaces EDU, maybe in their portfolio space or underneath the work that you're actually talking about. That would be a great way to have all of that documented in a streamlined fashion. And the other tool that I think is very exciting because we've just launched this in our most recent release is our proficiency base or competency base gradebook. So to access this gradebook, you'll actually go into the assessment tab, which is where all of our assessment tools live, and you'll notice that you have access to the growth book here. If for whatever reason the growth book is not appearing in your assessment tab, please let your district lead know. Could be that it hasn't been activated yet in the back end. If you are interested in it, it'd be nice to also just vocalize that to them, and then they could all bring it back to their partner success specialists if we can see if we can activate that for you. But from the growth book, what you'll see here is we have existing entries. So if this is, again, your first time using the growth book, this would be completely empty. But I do want to call out specific elements here of the growth book. You'll probably already notice that there are different colored tabs on the top, right? We have the ones in blue and the ones in green. The reason for this is because the green tabs here are related to activities that you've assigned in your class. So you could actually make sure that the activities are communicating to the growth book, that again, allowing you to see more trends across the curriculum or across your students, like their progression. And then the ones in blue are actual growth book entries. So they're not tied to any evidence of learning. You were simply recording the proficiency that you assign for those learning outcomes. So the example over here that I wanted to show you is this butterfly life cycle project. So I had students start their project planning through an activity. So they submitted their work, and then I assigned, I assessed them with proficiencies here. And they were also required to do a presentation, conduct a presentation in class. So I didn't need them to, record this in Spaces EDU, but I still wanted to have a place to record how they did on that presentation. So I could have that side-by-side comparison or just the ability to see if there was any growth in their learning here. We use the same curriculum tags in the activity. So we have demonstrate curiosity about the natural world, and then observe objects and events in familiar context, and then finally make predictions based on prior knowledge. So the same curriculum tags were applied in my entry for the butterfly life cycle presentation as we did in the project assignment here. So right off the bat, we can see that there are some trends, or maybe there are some changes in understanding, in mastery as well. So the activity was actually assigned before the presentation, of course. So some kids were emerging, and then they improved with their presentation when they applied all the feedback that they received, and then built upon their existing knowledge. They might have become more proficient, developing or extending. So you're able to see that progression, or even if there are trends across their understanding and performance, that would be made evident here by this lovely color-coded chart, or table rather. But if you wanted to add an additional entry, all you would have to do is click on the plus entry button on the bottom right corner there, and then enter a title for the assessment entry. I will go ahead and just put presentation, poetry presentation as an example, and I definitely have to assign a curriculum tag so I know what it is that I am assessing here. Okay, so we'll go with ELA, and we'll choose these two curriculum tags. Make sure we create this officially. There you go. And it appears in my growth book. And so as students are doing their poetry presentation, you can have this open on your computer, and then you can go ahead and, assess them as it's happening. So this is for a rapid assessment, ideal for that, or simply data entry if you wanted to record your proficiencies after all of the presentations have taken place here. So you'll just complete all of this until you've assessed all your students, and you would have a record of all of this within SpacesEDU. One thing I do want to note is that the growth book currently is only teacher facing and available for teachers to view and interact with. So students are not going to be notified about any of the growth book entries. They won't even have access to the growth book either. Neither will families. And another thing is once you start to build this data here within the growth book, it then gets communicated to the proficiency report at the end of October in our next release. So you'll be able to see a combined, visual representation here of both posts that student work that have evidence of learning and also what you've recorded in the growth book. So you'll have an idea of what their understanding and their mastery when it comes to those specific curriculum tags. So currently that information is not being communicated to each other, but at the end of October, it will be. And what's also awesome from here, just a few things to call out before we move on to another piece here is that you're able to filter the proficiency report by specific students or tags or even subject areas or grades. So if you are going to conference with students directly, you can showcase certain elements that you want to highlight, even with families if you're having those parent-teacher interviews as well. So just to recap, the growth book allows you, is great for rapid standards and proficiency-based assessments that doesn't require evidence of learning. So we went over how you can connect student work on SpacesEDU to the curriculum, but if you wanted to just record assessment data that isn't tied to specific evidence of learning, you could do so within the growth book. It's definitely a great tool that you should have in your assessment toolkit because it allows you to record and track students' academic performance throughout the entire year, and it enables you to quickly add and edit assessment entries without needing that evidence of learning that we've talked about. And all of that assessment data is then synced and displayed in one place, including activities as you saw if syncing is enabled, and any assessment entries you add directly to the growth book. And we've reviewed the proficiency report as well together, but as you can see, your assessment journeys really begins with the application of curriculum tags. So all assessment data attached to your students' work becomes easily accessible through the proficiency report, which is available via your teacher account, as you saw on the web version of SpacesEDU. Growth book entries will also be included, as I mentioned, in the proficiency report in our October release, so at the end of October. But currently, this comprehensive tool provides a really detailed overview of the curriculum tags you've already applied in posts or activities, and then the corresponding proficiency levels assigned to each student. So you can start getting excited for enhanced teaching strategies, meaningful conversations, and effortless competency or standards-based reporting. While we won't be exploring reporting tools per se in this course, I do recommend enrolling in or tuning back in for a reporting webinar at a later date. But these are all tools that you can use for reporting as well. Now, The proficiency report does give you valuable insights into your students' progress and growth in specific areas of learning and competencies. If you notice, let's say, a knowledge gap across your students, you can always pivot your teaching strategies based on these insights. And this tool really allows you to tailor your instructional approach to create those opportunities for differentiation in order to meet the diverse needs of your class. And furthermore, you'll actually have the opportunity to engage in more meaningful individual conversations with your students and families throughout the year, as this report facilitates one-on-one discussions and promotes metacognitive awareness of learning. This enables you to guide your students with tailored goal setting and personalized support. And so by being meticulous and intentional about what and how you're assessing, you can also simplify interim and year-end reporting. You'll have all the organized data that you need to report on student learning throughout the school year. So the big question is, what differentiates the growth book from the proficiency report? The main differences lie in their purpose and data sources. First of all, the growth book is designed for quick and efficient assessment data entry without evidence of learning. Teachers will manually add entries to the growth book, while in contrast, the proficiency report focuses on holistic standards-based assessment, visually displaying growth over time with a feed and charts. The proficiency report automatically pulls that data from posts and activities, enabling better in-depth data analysis and making it easier to identify learning gaps among your students. One final tidbit here that I wanted to highlight, another great tool for assessment is activities. So this allows you to automate assessment in a way where you're assigning specific tasks or assignments, um, whatever the case may be, in a scheduled format, or you can pre-tag these activities with what you're going to assess. So have those curriculum tags visible, and that way you don't have to manually do that for all of those submissions. So in activities, you'll notice I have a bunch open-ended here. If I were to show you, let's say, this writing activity that I've assigned, the instructions here, I've outlined what the goals were for this term for writing, and then I'll have a quick review of all my students, and then I can see what their submissions look like. So if I go to look at Maylin, I can have her submission displayed, and I can go ahead and assign a proficiency for the curricular objectives that I've determined here, and also provide more feedback in the comment section by attaching, let's say, a rubric or additional resources. So you are going to receive, notifications as submissions come in, and then you can refer back to the quick review table here to see where students are at, so you can see their progression. If it's in draft mode, you can intervene and take a peek at how they're doing and provide that feedback before submission. You are also able to assign proficiencies before you receive a submission. So if you have, some of that information already, you can always assess them and then modify as needed in the future. So what's also great about activities is that you can have a bunch ongoing throughout the school year, but you can also schedule them ahead of time. Um, and this is through, let me just show you by creating one right here, um, through the settings. So you can always assign those important dates. But what I want to highlight as well in the activity portal, that any activity that you create throughout your Spaces EDU journeys, they get put into the activity portal, and then you're able to reuse them for future activities. It doesn't have to be in the same class. So this is really great. You can always reuse the same content. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, and then you can always then change where you'd like to assign this activity, making sure it's going in the right space. You can make edits to the actual content, like the title and the instructions, and this is where you would find the important dates that I was talking about. You can schedule them ahead of time, so have them queued up throughout the year and include a due date in if you need to. And this is where the curriculum alignment comes into play, which is the curriculum tags, and you'll be able to assess those once you receive or once you review those activity submissions, or you can also assess them ahead of time if they are attached to external, activities or lessons, etc. And then one final thing in the activity settings, you'll notice that there's an option to add the activity to the growth book. So if you want that displayed, definitely toggle this on before you go ahead and click assign in the top right corner. All right, so that was all of your awesome assessment tools and pieces here in Spaces EDU. I know you're very excited by now to probably start using some of these throughout the school year, but your next steps essentially would include making sure you have a class set up in Spaces EDU if you haven't done so already, and that it is populated with students and, of course, families if that's important to you, and co-teachers if that is relevant to your situation as well. And you wouldn't be able to assess without the bread and butter of assessment here at Spaces EDU, and that is with curriculum tags. So make sure you're loading those relevant curriculum tag sets to your account accordingly. And then explore the assessment tab, go into the growth book, create some entries and see how the flow works. And then also tag some student posts as well, so you can see your proficiency report populate a little bit. And then you can consider what is the first assessment piece you really want to implement on Spaces EDU and try with your student this new school year. So on that note, I want to thank you so much for watching today's webinar. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact our tech support team at hello@spacesedu.com. You can also visit our help center. And we can also keep in touch through our socials, and definitely recommend following our podcasts on all streaming platforms. We've just launched our fourth season here at Spaces EDU, and it is on all things competency-based assessment or competency-based education, which is awesome. Again, thank you so much, and I hope to see you at our next webinar, and I will see you soon.